In this episode of The Bear Roars, Dan Caruso sits down with Ebs Burnough, an award-winning filmmaker, writer, and producer who also serves as chair of the board of the Sundance Institute, the nonprofit behind the world's most influential independent film community and festival. As Sundance prepares for its final year in Park City and its historic move to Boulder, Ebs reflects on the Institute's mission, Robert Redford's enduring legacy, and why storytelling remains one of the most powerful forces for cultural impact. Drawing from a career that spans acclaimed documentaries, service in the Obama White House, and leadership across film, politics, and technology, Ebs brings a rare, multi-dimensional perspective. Together, they explore how Sundance nurtures bold new voices, what AI means for the future of creative expression, and why community, human connection, and shared stories matter more than ever. Let's poke the bear to kick off the conversation.
Ebs,
How are you?
good. We've got the board chair of Sundance Film Festival here in Boulder, Colorado, right in advance of your last final Sundance event in Park City,
Yes.
until you then move here in 2027 for the inaugural Boulder Sundance Film Festival. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is going to be fun. And in addition to that big announcement, which we'll talk about, you had another big announcement this week.
Just yesterday, yes.
What was that?
We at the Institute, Sundance Institute, we announced our new CEO. So a great guy, David Lindy. So I am thrilled to have him joining the Institute. And
So tell us about David. I read up on his background a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know him, but tell us about him and what has made you guys so excited to bring David on board.
well, David is fantastic because he is multifaceted. So you've got a person here who was one of the founders of Focus Features, was also at a point was the chairman of Universal Pictures, and then lastly was the CEO of Participant, so he has this great understanding of impact, working on films that have impact and impact films, as well as the Universal side, incredibly big budget and commercial. And then what Focus and what Participant both did so beautifully is really finding, wonderful stories and indie stories. And, we have there's a joke that there's a great t-shirt of David's that says, "There's no indie without Lindy." And so he really understands what Sundance is all about, what the Institute's about, what the film festival is about. And so we're very, very excited to have him on board.
Great. And is he in LA? Where's he
He's
from?
between LA and New York, but he'll be traveling quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
He'll be on the road.
Okay, so let's go to you. And
Okey.
as you look forward in life, what is most important to you? What's your vision? What's your purpose? You're kind of mid-career right now. You got a lot of opportunity in front of you. What is going to matter to you most over the next 10, 20, 30 years?
Well, I'd say first and foremost would be my family. We've got 4 kids, and our youngest is going to be 6 in April.
Mhm.
So first and foremost that. But then related to that is impact. And so whether that's impact in making movies, which I'm a director and a producer and do film and theater and that sort of thing. Impact through, obviously chairing the board of Sundance. I'm on the board of Steppenwolf. I've been on
Chicago?
in Chicago, yes.
We're going to talk about Chicago.
A little bit of
We're
North.
gonna talk
I'm
about
on some
Truman
Northwestern
Capote.
boards, but also some corporate boards. So I think there's a big thing for me that's about impact, because I look at, especially when I look at my almost 6-year-old, then I think, in 30 years, right now, we live in London. So right now I'm away from her for the next 10, 11 days,
Yes.
which is, a long time for an almost 6-year-old. I want her to be able to say, "Oh, he wasn't here during that 2-week period because he was doing that over there, and I'm proud of that."
Mhm.
And so I think that's a big, it's about impact
Yep.
for me.
But what impact? Like,
What
what kind of impact do you personally really want to have and leave behind?
I-
Or are you still kind of sorting through that?
No, I think it's twofold. One is impact through storytelling.
Mhm.
So as a director, for me, the first film I directed was a documentary on Truman Capote. It's called The Capote Tapes. And I fell in love with the story, more or less. I was reading a book on Bill Paley and the founding of CBS.
Okay.
And when it was a big kind of 800-page tome, and when I got to the end of the book, I was most fascinated by, I knew what it was. I've been around a lot of kings and captains of industry. I knew what it was to be the Bill Paley of it all. What the story that I felt like hadn't been told was this story of Truman Capote and Bill's wife, Babe. And so
Okay.
then I went down a rabbit hole. And so
Well, let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Tell
it,
us what that story is
it
all
was
about.
this story of
And that has a tie-in with where you grew up. Is that right?
a bit. Just kind of growing up in part in the American South, and I was a reader of Capote when I was young, um, and Babe Paley was someone whose daughter I'm friends with, and Babe was a great beauty and kind of New York socialite.
Mhm.
But the story of Capote hadn't really. Philip Seymour Hoffman had been in a beautiful film that I think was directed by Bennett Miller called Capote, but was really on a slice of the writing of In Cold Blood. What I was fascinated by was who was this man Truman Capote that people called a tiny terror, and there's a lot of viciousness about him. And as I went down the rabbit hole, what I was fascinated by was at the end of the day, he was a gay man in an era. He was openly gay, really, in an era when that was completely. First of all, it was illegal, but also
What years?
Truman was
50s?
born in 1926, so
Yeah,
you're talking Breakfast at
50s.
Tiffany's was written in 1958.
Mhm.
So you're talking, this 50s, 60s, and on era. And he was a person who the greatest thing I
Isn't it
realized
amazing that, I mean, the 1950s weren't that long
long
ago, and
ago,
to
it's
think that,
things were
they've been
illegal,
illegal. I mean, it's just,
and
it's hard to get your head around that.
he couldn't have a family.
Yeah.
And so what was fascinating when I realized it and I found this woman was that he had a lover who was married and had children. And eventually, the lover was an alcoholic, as was his wife. And the youngest child in that family ended up moving out of Long Island and moving into New York City, to Manhattan,
Mhm.
and living with Truman. And she, to this day, Kate, to this day, considers Truman more of a father. And she lived with him from around the age of 12, um, all the way, until she became an adult. And so it's finding those stories where you get to the humanity of a person. You think a person is one way. My latest film, this documentary, has been on Jack Kerouac. Then you think of On the Road, and you think of a particular type of thing. And
Jack Kerouac is,
you know,
who is he?
Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road. He was a great author. Actually, Truman Capote always used to say that Kerouac wasn't a writer; he was a typist. But he,
What does that mean? That
because
doesn't sound very
it
respectful.
was not at all respectful. Kerouac journaled his. He spent 7 years on the road driving from, or hitchhiking from the East Coast to the West Coast and back and forth, and having these experiences with the beat poets, and being high on speed and smoking weed and doing all sorts of. And you have, there's this image of, you know on the road and a cigarette dangling out of your mouth and just getting on the road and not knowing where you're going and going. And then, for me, again, that's a story where you had a person who, when you got deeper, it was a person who actually did a lot of work on his writing. And when I was going through his journals, you realize how much he edited that to make it seem completely unedited. And
Mm.
so when it goes to what I'm fascinated by stories that are untold, and getting to the heart of the matter. And so impact for me in one way is through that. And that's what we do at Sundance.
Of course.
And of course, chairing the board, I'm fascinated by getting to see and meet so many great storytellers who are doing similar things or completely different things. And then I spent a lot of time in politics, and that was a big chunk of my life.
Because you worked directly with, it sounds like Michelle Obama when she
I,
was
I did.
First Lady?
I worked with, I was Michelle's political director on the '08 campaign, and then I was deputy social secretary to the president and first lady, and then through the first term. And then I left, but before that, I had been policy director for Andrew Cuomo when he was running for attorney general, and I'd worked on tons of campaigns around the country and in cities. So again, impact in how do you make people's lives better? And I think storytelling makes lives better. So it all goes back to how do you leave a legacy that is something you can be proud of. For me, that is opening doors and taking people on journeys that are hopefully enriching.
Hmm. Yeah, that's good. And I got to imagine to find a story that you want to tell that hasn't already been told, and that you have a way of telling the story, so an inspiration that comes to you. That's got to be fleeting. What does it feel like to know you want to discover additional stories to tell, but not knowing what those stories might be?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like I don't know. I guess it's kind of like looking for seashells.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're out on the beach, and look, everybody has a story, right? There are stories everywhere, and I think the struggle becomes finding what stories resonate enough. You do, especially on a documentary, for in any film, but on a documentary, you spend several years working on this. So you spend several years in this world with this person,
Mm.
this character, this. So you gotta want to get to know them, and you might, by the way, halfway through realize that you're deep in and you don't like them.
Mm.
It's not always a
But
love
you're
story,
vested at
but
that
you're
point.
invested at that point. It's not
Yeah,
all a love story.
yeah. I had to come up with a story. I started to get a little bit stressed, even though I have plenty of time. So I'm giving the commencement address at the University of Chicago MBA program, and they asked me like 6, 7, 8 months ago. I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. And now it's starting to get closer. I'm like, anytime now they're going to send me a note and say, hey, we'd like to see your draft, and I need to come up with kind of a story, an angle, something that will be fresh and inspirational and unique, and and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've still got a few months, but then
Are they going to
it
ask you
just,
for a draft?
oh, of course, they won't let you
No, I didn't get
give a commencement
leave it to UFC. I
At least,
I did this for the School of Communication at Northwestern.
yeah.
They saw nothing.
Mm.
I walked in cold. They had no idea what I was going to say. No, but it is you're looking for the germ, right?
Yeah,
You're
and
looking
I
for the
found it, by the
seed.
way.
Did you find
I
it?
found it, and I test ran it. The reason it hit me at 10 o'clock
Yep.
2 nights ago is I had the next morning I agreed to give a little talk to an economics class at University of Colorado, and I didn't know what I was going to talk to them about. So it was on my mind, and I came up with something like, "Holy shit, this could work for the commencement address. I'm going to try it out in front of these economist students," and I think I got it.
Yeah,
It's
you
going
got
to
it.
be really cool, but I got to keep it
You keep
under
it. All right, you
wraps.
keep it under wraps for the moment. Keep it under
It's
wraps.
a really interesting kind of way of kind of talking about the times we're in right now in a way that I think will resonate both with the students, but also with the powers to be
Hmm.
at the University of Chicago will like it as well. So
I love it.
I feel relieved.
I
But
love
it's
it.
storytelling, right? It's how do you
Yeah.
tell stories that you want to tell, uh, that others hopefully want to hear, and that will resonate and they will remember it. I mean, that's
And even if
so
they,
important.
and I think it's important, even if they don't want to hear it, storytelling, what we do in life is storytelling. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you live in, the Northeast or the Southwest, storytelling is how we present to people, not just who we are, but what we believe. And
Mhm.
so I think constantly, you turn on, you know, the news, or if you are on social media, and that's how you are learning what's going on a day-to-day basis, that's all someone telling you some version of a story. And it becomes increasingly, I find, for me at least, it's a battle to I have to kind of sift through a lot of different stories to try and find what I believe is now the kernel of truth, perhaps.
Yeah, I watched a story a few months ago. That's an example, one where I'm not sure I wanted to see it. I'm not sure. I'm glad I saw it, uh, but you know, it caused you to think about it a lot. It was very disturbing, and if you look at the reviews of it, it's a Netflix series. Uh, People either rate it with really high number stars or extremely low number stars. It was the Monster series and the Ed
Oh,
Gein story, and I didn't
yeah,
know
yeah,
anything
yeah,
about
yeah,
this
yeah.
Ed Gein, and
Yeah.
that was the way it was told was really interesting and compelling, but the goriness of it and
It's a gory story.
the extremeness of it was like, you know, I'm not really sure that was
Yeah.
the thing to watch.
Yeah, completely. But you won't forget it.
No, I won't forget it. And I did appreciate. Uh, did you by chance
I know the
see it?
story. I haven't seen
Yeah,
it.
but the way it was told, because he would look forward in time, go backwards in time, but when he would look forward in time, it would be on a whole series of characters that that were on my radar at various times growing up. That guy never was, but the subsequent ones were, and he'd bring them into it and tie them to the story. And there was probably 8, 9, maybe not that many, 6 or 7 iconic future stories
Right.
that he would draw back into this one. And it was like, wow.
I have to watch that now.
Yeah. Well, be careful because
Well-
it is disturbing.
No, it's a very disturbing
Tread
story.
carefully.
A very disturbing story.
Yeah, but great. So, so Boulder, Colorado,
Yeah.
new home of Sundance. Why Boulder?
Why Boulder? Gosh. Well, I mean, you know why Boulder. I mean, Boulder is it's an incredible community. It's beautiful. I mean, the ethos,
Look right over your-
I mean, you're looking out, the mountains, everything about it is beautiful. We've really, I mean, I've found that the people are incredible, and the community of it all, and the sense of community, and the willingness to hold hands and lock arms together and really solve problems and dig into things. When we, as a board and as a staff, and as what we had was a search committee, we did a request for proposal when we were considering other cities for the film festival to go to. And as we, there was a long process of narrowing down to, 20 places. I think we had 86 places to begin with that
Really?
responded to the RFP, to the request. And then that was narrowed down to, I think, 60 who were then in for another round. And then from that, it was down to kind of 40 and 20, and then 6 and 3 and so and 1. And what I would say is Boulder has there's a charm. There's an incredible, obviously, CU Boulder. There's an incredible school, which I think is also such a vibrant, beating heart sort of piece of this community. Obviously, there's an incredible tech community here that, throughout the state, but really centered here in Boulder, that also, when we talk about storytelling, is a major way in being hand in hand with storytellers. And that's also disrupting, in many ways, depending on how you look at it, for positive or for negative, but technology is disrupting this, I don't want to call it staid, but certainly the traditional model of storytelling and of film and of episodic and all of that. And so there were a lot of different components. There's an amazing airport near Boulder, so people can get in here from around the world and from both coasts.
Including a private one, which I
Including
know
a
a lot
private
of
one
the
that is
Sundance
not
crew will
too,
use.
that is not too far, and it's just it's a wonderful place, and I think, and the people are great, and there's a vibrant and really standout cultural community here, and so all of those were elements as to why Boulder.
Well, Boulder will never be the same as it was because of Sundance. It's the arc of change has already begun to accelerate relative to Sundance. And you mentioned tech, but there's also an emerging creative content creation scene here too. Did you know that we've had 2 brand new production studios that got announced here with Boulder leaders?
No, I didn't know this.
Yeah. So one is Spiridalis Brothers Studios.
Okay.
So it's 2 brothers. One lives in Boulder, had just moved here a few years ago from LA, the other in LA. And it was funded by, among others, the Google AI Fund.
Okay.
We put some money in it as well. And they've had a really strong track record in the past, most recently selling Storybots. They were the creators behind that, and they sold that to I think it was Netflix. So that's one. And then second is Jason Berman, who's long associated.
Yes, I did. Yes.
And he's had a long track record, I think like 8 or 9 films in Sundance Film Festival,
Yes.
multiple $100 million plus films.
Yep.
But now he opened up his own studio, moved to Boulder about during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's kind of L.A., Boulder, New York, and London. Check out Boulder.
That's right.
Yes.
No.
So you have that. And you might not know this. We also have in town a gaming studio, mobile gaming studio that was named the #1 gaming studio by Apple for the Apple Arcade platform. Not this year, but not 2025, but I think it was 2024.
Huh.
So X Games is headquartered here. Outside, which is all about outdoor
Yeah.
kind of adventure,
Yep.
Multimedia platform. So there's these pockets of content creation brands or platforms combined with creative tech scene that's emerging alongside it. And I think those are just kind of the seeds that are, coincidentally have been planted, not because of Sundance, but in conjunction with Sundance. But boy, those are going to, blossom into a big creative garden around here.
Which is super exciting, right?
Yes.
Because I think one of the most important things, that we at Sundance Institute, but certainly with the festival residing or coming here in 2027, we want to be a catalyst. You talk about planting things. We want to help water. You know what I mean? And I think we all will grow together because first and foremost, for what we at the Institute do is we're artist driven. Our primary focus is how do we help our artists tell the stories that they want to tell, and that's and often that takes itself in many different directions, right? There's the how do we help you be sustaining in the sense that you're able to eat and pay your rent, but also our lab programs, the director's lab and the screenwriter's lab and the editors, and all of those catalysts, all these programs that are really centered.
Tell us a little more about those programs.
Because
some of those have been here in Colorado.
In Colorado, yes.
Right?
So we've had the director's lab for a couple of years has been at the Stanley Hotel, and that's really.
And for people who don't know about the Stanley Hotel,
in Estes Park,
the famous Stanley Hotel from
from The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining.
From The Shining, yes. And these are programs, these are labs where you have amazing talent, like Chloe Zhao, who's a great director who right now has the amazing film Hamnet out, and she's a great example. Or and we have mentors and people, whether it's Ed Harris or whether it's Scott Frank, who's a great writer, who screenwriter, who are mentoring these cohorts, and they come together for a couple of weeks and are really mentored, and they're working on a project. And they, if you're the director's lab, that project is put up. It gets on its feet with actors and blocking and all of that good stuff. And this is where, when Bob Redford created from his brain, from his consciousness, from his soul, this idea of Sundance and the idea of being something that was anti the traditional at the time of Hollywood, because he saw so many great stories that weren't able to be told because they weren't quote unquote commercial. Mm. And so what he wanted to do was also first and foremost say, gosh, we got to nurture that talent. And that's what we do at the Institute. First and foremost, we nurture the talent. And then the festival is, what we're kind of certainly publicly more known for. But the festival is really a place where that talent that's been nurtured, many years ago and still today to a degree, then you get to see the final product. And that's what makes it all such an incredible ecosystem. So.
Let's talk a little bit more about the person you refer to as Bob and the person most of us would call Robert Redford.
Yes.
The Natural, The Sting, two of the more important movies in my life at different stages. Those were, when he did The Sting, it was when I was young, and I was just fascinated by the whole idea of these grifters and pulling off what they pulled off. And then The Natural is still probably my favorite sports film. Maybe there might be one or two contenders with that. Tell us more about Robert Redford. You knew him personally. You knew him as Bob. He stayed with the Film Fest all the way through when he passed away last year. So tell us more about his inspiration, like what made him do it? What was he like as a person?
He was passionate about the Institute. He was a believer in artists, and he was a believer, you know, when we have our board meetings, I like to always start our board meetings by centering ourselves around. He had kind of a list of his principles that he had written um, early on, 40 years ago when he was first getting Sundance off the ground. And it was, and they, you know, there are tenets in there where it's, pay attention to nature, like the value of, understand that where you are and the surroundings that you're in affect how you create and how you think about the world. There are things, there's these kind of, there are moments, not just for an institution to live by, but moments for individuals to live by. And he was incredibly thoughtful and incredibly generous of everything that he had in building this institute. And so in that sense, you know, you don't have to do that when you're one of the most, you're the most famous movie star in the world.
Mhm.
You don't have to give back in such a very thoughtful and structured way. And
Well, you don't have to give back
at all,
all.
let alone in the way
Yeah.
that he did. And he was incredibly committed to it, and coming to the festival each year and going to the directors' breakfast and talking to at the festival. There's a director's breakfast that's held for all of the directors who have a film at the festival,
Mhm.
and it's a really special. It's a very special breakfast, and it was always even more special because they were hearing directly from him, and he really wanted to interact with them, and that's a special bond, and that's one of the special things I think in general about Sundance, the Institute, the film festival, all of it, the labs. It's about, and this one of the things that I'm excited about also with the festival in Boulder. It is about that transference of knowledge and a handoff in some ways, or a passing along to the future, and that he did beautifully.
And on the passing along, the Redford legacy continues within Sundance. Do you want to talk about his daughter and how she
Uh,
remains engaged?
Yes, his daughter Amy, who is on the board, who is a great storyteller in her own right, and is incredibly involved and carries his his spirit and his passion, and she always will be, she's always going to be the first to speak. The first words out of her mouth are going to always be, "How is this affecting our artists?" Like she's always going to look first and say, let's think about it from the artist angle, and then how are we protecting our people, our staff. And so she carries a lot of those values that he as a parent instilled in her, and she keeps that very much alive within the institution.
Yeah, what I'm most excited about, uh, we live in a strange time right now, right? Politically, there's a lot of divisiveness. People are on one side or the other side of the spectrum, at least the most visible ones are on one side or the other. And a lot of people are having trouble just, getting along with one another, even having relationships with one another. Yet, we did the Boulder Roots Music Fest
Hmm.
uh, this past year, inspired by Sundance coming into town, or at least largely inspired by that. And what was most important to me, both in why we got behind it and helped make it happen, but also coming out of the experience, was how it brought the community together. How people of all walks of life, were able to get together and forget about if what's going on in the rest of the world and what political agendas some people might or might not have, and they just got away from their screens, away from their devices, away from their remote work, and got into the community and hung out together over
Right.
a handful of just beautiful days in many different venues, bumping into each other, sharing experiences together. And yeah, I think we need a lot more of that type of stuff right now. That we probably, for more so than any point in time in my life, you need to find kind of good opportunities for people to get out there and get engaged with one another.
100%. We underestimate um, I think we underestimate the residual effects of COVID.
Mhm.
Um, you know, not in 100 years had people been forced, where you were terrified. Could you go outside? Right?
Mhm.
Like in the beginning, who could you be with? Where were you locked in a room? And I think we have underestimated the cabin fever that has done to the global population.
Yeah. I was riding my bike outside, of course, outside, riding my bike on a bike trail. And I remember there was some security person or something on the bike trail, like trying to chase me down because I didn't have a mask on
Scott,
while I'm riding my bike.
right?
I mean, how crazy was
Right,
that?
crazy. And what I think we underestimated that sense of, I have one of my kids was just starting college, was a freshman. And you underestimate for young people
Oh man, you aren't kidding for young people?
all of that time that was my freshman year was, I don't know how much I went to class, it was an amazing time. But
Do art students go to classes? I didn't
you
realize
know
they
what I
did.
mean? Exactly. I mean, but it was, you rolled out of your senior year of high school where, the bitter end of things were kind of starting to be problematic in the summer. And then, and then by March, everything is shut down and you don't know how long it's going to last. And it lasts a long time. And then you come out of it for a bit and then you go back in. And I think we underestimated in the midst of all of the other things that were happening in life, we became really locked away. We became tucked away in our homes, or even if we were outside in our little space. And to your point, we need engagement. We are human.
Hmm.
We 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 need to have touch, and we need all of the senses. And I think people are longing for that. And I think we need music festivals, we need film festivals, we need those moments where we are forced to bump into one another. And I think in that process of bumping into one another, we find our own humanity, because we realize that, you know in each of us there's a germ of the rest of humanity and civilization. So
When we did the music fest, we need to figure out how to fund it. And from my foundation standpoint, we helped underwrite it to get it going, but
mhm,
that wasn't going to continue it on its own. We needed to see if the community was ready to support it. And we ended up getting really widespread support, in particular from the tech community. People were writing bigger checks to fund the festival so that the broad community could enjoy it. And what we came out of the festival, one big takeaway is, we asked ourselves, why did they do that? Because they could go out and go see music and do that kind of stuff
right.
and spend a lot less money. But the reason they were doing it was to engage with one another, to meet other new people who have come to this area, who are also really interesting people. They wanted to kind of build more community, build more relationships. So in the next go around for this year's one new program we're going to introduce, really in the days leading up to the Music Fest weekend, we call Bold Conversations. And it's kind of structured conversations across 3 different tracks, one being lifestyle,
Mhm.
one being culture, and one being tech, and group people together in 14 to 16 person groups around a specific topic in a track, and just have them talk to each other, have a conversation, so that then when they get together in the evening for music and other events, they've just met a bunch of new friends,
That's right.
and now they could take that
That's
and
great.
hang with them. So we're going to try to bring out that whole part of you're going to come out of this with just a lot of really authentic, engaging relationships.
And look, the reality is the more we engage with people, regardless, we don't have to agree on everything.
Hmm.
That's also this myth that, to be friends, it's essential that, you and I share the same politics, or that we,
Well, I mean, look at us.
it,
I'm University of Chicago. You're
Western.
Northwestern.
I mean,
That's a
exactly.
problem.
Exactly. We were fun. You all were more erudite, shall we say. But it is that sort of, we have to engage. And I think one of the things that spending so much time and having grown up in a rather political family, and spending a lot of time on the road in America, in particular in politics, one of the great lessons, and I lived in South Carolina and Iowa and, God, Ohio and Missouri and Kansas, you name it. I've
And now
probably lived
London.
in, and now I live in London. I've lived in, 17, 18, 20 states in this country.
Really? That many
Yeah,
different
yeah,
places?
yeah,
Why
yeah.
so many different places?
Because I was working on campaigns and I would be there for, 6 months. So then I would be there, I was in South Carolina. I was there for probably, 6 or 8 months. And then we moved to the next place. And especially when you're working on presidentials. And, the common denominator would always be once you met someone, once you had a beer with someone, once you broke bread with someone, you could actually have a conversation and you could actually find out what mattered to them, right? It is what gets you up in the morning. You asked me, the first question you asked me was, kind of to me, legacy, but what do you want to leave behind? What do you want the future to be? For most people, I would ask that question. I would just say something, I'd say, when you get up in the morning, like, what are you most concerned about? Because that's the majority of Americans, and they're concerned about their kids, or they're concerned about whether or not they have enough money in the bank if they have 4 flat tires. But once you get through that,
How do you get 4 flat tires?
and you go backwards over that thing, then when you're
Back and
leaving,
forth.
you're
Wow, you gotta be a
leaving.
pretty bad driver to have
You're
4
going
flat tires.
backwards. But you have that, and at the end of the day, people can talk about anything, and they don't care if you don't agree on monetary policy or if you da da da. But it is community, and it's being heard, and it's finding common denominators in places that you 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 have shared you've shared values.
How was, looking back in your journey, um, how likely was it that you were going to have a successful journey versus when you look back, was there a world that you might
Not have
not have kind
no.
of done what you've done, traveled around, been in so
No,
many
there
prominent
wasn't. I was
positions?
very lucky for that. I was very lucky. I had a very controlling mother, controlling in a good way. I mean, and bad ways too, but I'll take the positives. A very and someone who was very adamant, and I had a lot of I was had a lot of great privileges, and I was able to I had a lot of opportunities, and so I didn't. Um, there was never really for me. I knew that I didn't know what I was going to do, and there were a lot of ups and downs. I mean, I
Sure.
lived, you know, I moved around. Like I said, I went working in politics, and before that, I was an actor for a brief period of time following college, and and that was a moment where I remember my mother saying, if you want to do this, that's fine, but you're gonna have to wait tables or do whatever. Yeah, you got to figure out how you're gonna do this. So no, I didn't know, but I was really lucky that I always had great opportunity and a lot of family support and
Mm.
a lot of love, but also a lot of kick you in the ass, like a lot of to whom much is given, much is expected. So
Mm.
is this the best you can do, sort of
Mm.
thing.
Gotcha. And what were the circumstances that led to you being part of President Obama and the First Lady's kind of world?
Well, there are kind of two. One was at Northwestern
Mhm.
when I was a freshman. I really wanted to get into a course that was the presidency and the press, and it was being taught by Rahm Emanuel, who at that time was not yet a member of Congress, but uh, had been in the Clinton White House.
Mhm.
And I fought to get in the class, fought to get in the class, and everybody kept saying it's a freshman, you're a freshman, it's for juniors and seniors, you can't get in class. And I had a good friend at the university who said, who was an administrator, and he said, just sit in the class the class met, I think, twice a week for like 3 hours or something. He said, if you just sit and sit and sit and never leave. And by the end of the quarter, I had kind of become so ingrained, and I would just ask questions. I'd become such a part of the class that Rom was like,
Did he realize you weren't a
he
student?
just I remember the TA finally saying, he says you can be in the class. So you're like,
Okay.
yeah. And I got in the class, and that's how he and I that's how we got to know each other, and that's how I first met David Axelrod, and that's how I first met Rich Daley, who was at the time mayor of Chicago, because Ron would have all these speakers come through, and then I left, and we stayed in touch. We've stayed in touch since then, and I ended up working on all these different political campaigns, and we had a friend who was running for who had been a governor and a senator in Florida who was running for president. And so I moved to Iowa to work for him. And, they drop out and you move someplace else. Fast forward, at a certain point, I end up in New York, back in New York, should I say, and I'm working for a labor union, for SEIU, for 1199. And I was really advocating on behalf of home health aides who had no working wage and no health care, but were actually providing health care. And it was the first time that I really had an up-close look at what it meant, the complete, for me, insanity that this person could be a health provider and not have health care for themselves. And so I did that, and in that process, I met a great man, Patrick Gaspard, and Patrick was one of my bosses there. And fast forward, he would become the political director for the then Senator Obama on the presidential. And then as that was growing, one day, they needed to start building a team around Michelle. And they said, Patrick mentioned me. And Ram said, that's as he always likes to say, that's my student. And David knew me because I'd hired David Axelrod to do our media for Cuomo when I was running his race for Attorney General. And I got a call. I was working in DC and Maryland at the time. I got a call, and 48 hours later, I was back in Chicago on the 11th floor and had my meeting with Michelle, and there was no going, didn't leave.
Mm. Did you ever come across Don Gibbs?
Oh, yeah.
So Don was a really close friend of mine, still is.
Well, it's funny because Don went to South Africa.
Yes.
As ambassador to South Africa.
Yes.
And Patrick went into the White House as head of political affairs. And when he left the White House, replaced Don as ambassador to South Africa.
Yep.
And Patrick is now on the board of Sundance.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, Don and I were working together, and he ended up being part of, for whatever set of reasons, part of the early inner circle when President Obama was deciding whether or not to run.
Yes.
He had been in the past administration, left politics to join us at level 3, and I remember those very early moments when he was talking about, this guy from Chicago is going to be the next president.
This guy from Chicago.
Yes.
Yeah.
South side of Chicago.
South side.
So I grew up just outside the south side of Chicago. You got past the city limits, so
I know. I love Chicago.
very cold. Yeah. Don't like the weather.
No,
don't like the traffic. Don't like the suburbs.
Weather. The weather can be tough, and it's all about the gear.
Yeah.
But it's funny because we have to make sure, because Nora Daly is coming to Sundance this year.
Okay.
And so we have to make sure, because Nora was the person who got me involved with Steppenwolf, and I always tease because Nora was the person who kind of theater company in Chicago, and she was like, you got to get involved, and I was still quite hesitant. And then from that, I kept going, and it was kind of Steppenwolf that inevitably helped me get involved with Sundance. So.
Well, let's come back and talk about Steppenwolf in a second, but I was at one Chicago Bears Green Bay Packers game at Soldier Field, and it was 2 games ago, or I guess 3 games ago now, that crazy first comeback they had against Green Bay.
Yep.
And then they had the second crazy comeback. How much fun is Chicago when the Chicago Bears are winning?
There's nothing, Look, when any of the Chicago
Cubs,
teams are winning, the Cubs, it's
How about the White Sox?
Not so much the White Sox. The Cubs, the Bears, the Bulls.
Hey, I was there in the Michael Jordan era.
Years. I mean, no. And that's one of the interesting things. I will say that's one of the things that I find really compelling about both Boulder as a city, but also Colorado as a state. which is I'm fascinated, and this is two-pronged, but one, I'm always fascinated by, I love it when a community rallies behind something, because to
Mhm.
me it shows the soul of the people. Because
Mhm.
like, and that's something. It's so, Chicago, New York. I mean, I've lived in New York my whole life. New York is, people are passionate about the Knicks, or they're passionate, but it's different when the Bears are having a moment. The entire city, even if you're not a football fan, everybody's invested.
Yeah.
And that's something that I am finding, and I think I've told you this. I said it to Governor Polis, and I've said it a number of times in some remarks that I had to give. With Sundance coming to Boulder, the film festival is coming to Boulder, but the Sundance Institute, we are here to show up throughout this state, and I think we have, as partners here in Colorado, we have a unique opportunity that I haven't seen really done anywhere in the country, which is, I want, my dream is for people in this state, for people in Fort Morgan, for people in Salida, whether in Fort Collins, I want people to feel like they own and have great pride in the Sundance Film Festival being in their state.
Mhm.
And I want them to say, "Oh my God, we're gonna go for a couple of days, and we're gonna go to Boulder, and we're gonna see a bunch of films, and we're gonna hear talks, and we're gonna go to panels, and we're gonna eat good food, and we're gonna have an amazing time." But I want people to have that commitment, that pride, that investment in this, the same way they do in the Broncos.
Mhm.
I want people. I want to get to the airport, and I want to see a random person with a backpack getting on the train to go to their gate with a Sundance Film Festival T-shirt on. That for me will be th- that for me. That when you talk about what do you want to do, like, that to me is legacy, because that's about what I said to Bob. That's about securing the next 40 years of the institute.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Boulder's Boulder's only 35 minutes from Denver, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe an hour plus to Fort Collins. So this is a tight community, and in some other cities, like in Chicago, Boulder would be a suburb of Chicago,
Chicago, yeah.
suburb of Denver. So a lot of what we do is we care. We're in Boulder, so we care more about Boulder uh, to some degree, but it's really about Colorado and bringing Colorado together, and it's really about bringing Colorado connected to other places as well. I mean, we want the broader uh, kind of U.S., the broader world, to see Colorado as kind of an interesting and fair and exciting and compelling place to be and to partner with.
And you look out the window, and how can you not want to be here?
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so you layer all of that. I think you layer that with incredible sports. You layer that with great arts and culture. You layer that with amazing and vibrant tech community and business community. And you start to, you paint a picture that's really hard for people not to want to walk into.
Yeah, and a lot of people who listen to this are Colorado people, but a lot of are outside of Colorado, and we've got a great sports scene here. And this year, especially with Avalanche having the best record and Broncos getting one of the first round buys, and we've got Jokic and the Nuggets, who
Nuggets,
are
yep.
one of the best basketball teams. This is couldn't be a better period for Colorado professional sports right now. Now, CU Boulder struggled a little bit this year, but
I went to my first CU Boulder game the other day,
okay.
so I've
Had a
got
lot
to
of
go.
time to socialize.
There's a lot, and actually, it was I said to everybody, I gotta come back more, because this was right before, I think it was right before Thanksgiving, so it was kind of like there had been a clear out. I didn't have quite as much of the full student experience as I
Mhm.
as I like to have, but it was a good
So,
experience.
with Sundance coming to Boulder, uh, after how long was it in Park City?
We've been in Park City over 40 years, so
Yeah.
we're at this probably 43, 44 years,
Yeah.
or 45, yeah.
So, the identity of Sundance, the meaning behind Sundance, isn't going to change. But at the same time, you have an opportunity to reimagine some aspects of Sundance. What kind of things have you guys been thinking? I know you got to get through the last one in Park City,
Well,
and that's when the game's really going to begin.
it's a
But
yes and because you're I think the team is really working hard. Obviously, they're deep in the throes. Today is January. They're deep in the throes of this year's festival, but at the same time having to really look ahead because one of the reality is you can't just pick it up and put it in a new location in the same way.
Mhm.
So
and you probably wouldn't want to, even if you
nor
could.
would you want to, even if you could. And so we're building an entirely, the ethos, the soul, what the festival is, and what it stands for, and the the why of what we do, all still remains the exact same. The how becomes a bit different. New location, new town, new everything. And so I think there's a lot of conversation around how do we how do we take so many of the wonderful additional new things that Boulder brings and incorporate them into those 2 weeks of the festival. And so I think that's going to be something. Um, it's something that we're really looking at. It's something certainly as we have conversations about the importance. One thing that we are also a convener. The
Oh, of
institute,
course.
Sundance Institute, is a convener. Sundance Film Festival is a convener, and so one of the things we value is the ability to convene and also really have interesting and dynamic conversations around a variety of things, often related, as you could imagine, to the films that are being shown. And so that ranges from politics or issues of war and conflict around the world to the environment to technology. And, this year we've got, I think there are two films that are somewhat related to AI and filmmaking and that sort of thing, which is
And we're going to talk. I'm going to move this topic to talk a lot about AI in a second.
Mhm.
So we'll come back to that. But keep going.
yeah, which is a complex
Oh yes.
topic in this industry. And so, I think we have the convening power to bring together different voices and different threads of conversation to have interesting and dynamic conversations about the future. And that's a really important thing.
Yep. So I get the question. We get the question quite often because people know we've been engaged with Sundance, but people in Colorado are like, I want to get engaged with Sundance. What do I need to do? How do I get plugged in? I want to be maybe supportive. I want to be, more aware of what's going to be going on. What should we be thinking about? So, what would you tell those in Colorado who are excited about Sundance coming here and they're trying to figure out how to get in front of it? What would you tell them?
Gosh, there's so many ways. I would say there's, first and foremost, here on the ground, we have an amazing team that's led by a fantastic woman named Paula Dupre
Yes.
Pessman. And
Who we've gotten to know
you've
quite
gotten to know
well.
Paula quite.
She's great.
And she's, what's wonderful about Paula is, just a quick aside, Paula was on the kind of the team that was championing Boulder, and she's an amazing storyteller and filmmaker and a terrific, Oscar-winning producer in her own right. And as we got through, and then it was Boulder, and we were kind of like, okay, we now what? Here we go. And I called Paula, and the team, our creative team, adores her, and I said, would you ever consider coming on and helping us hit this out of the ball. I hit this out of the ballpark, stick the landing, as it were. And she said, yes. And she's been, and this team, she and Dana Bacardi and
Ran into Dana just 2 days
did
ago
did
again.
you? These folks have really are really on the front lines, and they've got great team. But I would say those are kind of in the immediate. If there are people out there who are really saying, I'd love to get involved, I want to be helpful in a certain way, and those ways range and run the gamut. But I would say those are Paula, Dana, those are the people that I would immediately kind of go to.
Great. Yeah, and we've been helping Dana and Paula get introduced to the right people
Thank
around
you.
here, and
Thank you.
it's been going really well. There's a lot of excitement. In fact, not related to Sundance, although I think we're going to give Sundance a chance to, talk about themselves a bit. We're doing our own film premiere here in about a month and a half.
What
Uh,
is this?
so it's called Our Quantum Future. It's a film produced by a different organization. I have a couple cameos in it, but it was filmed globally with a lot of Nobel Prize winners, a lot of physicists, and quite a number of quantum business leaders in kind of this early stage of quantum. So the film, which I haven't seen yet, I've seen the trailers,
Trailer, okay.
but the film itself is going to be covering all the interesting aspects of kind of this revolution of quantum that's just beginning to happen. And we're going to do it at Dairy Arts Center.
Okay.
So it's going to be,
When is this?
let's see, Kendall, date of that? It's coming up in about a month or so, but we're pretty excited about it.
It is on March 2nd.
March 2nd. So we got about a month and a half. We just started putting invites, but we're going to give Sundance a chance to, after we do the reception, but before we launch the movie, we'll have Sundance have an opportunity to say a few words about Sundance coming
That's great.
in a year or so. Keep teasing.
I
that
may be
to
here
other
then.
people. Oh, if you are,
I might
we'll
be
have
here
you
then.
on stage.
I might be here then, actually, because I know I have to be here on the 5th. So I may be here then.
Gotcha.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. I assume it's gonna be really high quality. The teaser was, and the guys who produce it are really interesting guys that I've known for a while. So pretty excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. So let's get to that topic.
Yeah.
AI. So let's get to it now. AI is different than anything that's happened before. As someone who's been in technology, been part of a huge part of the internet revolution, so I think I'm probably more qualified than most to put it in perspective. And I'm in the camp that is not the camp that says, "Oh yeah, this is like one of many new technologies that was going to be disruptive, but it's no different than past ones." It is fundamentally different. It is far more unpredictable than past ones. It's far more powerful. It's moving far more quickly than even the internet moved. It's certainly going to do a lot of good in a lot of ways, but it certainly also is a big threat in a multifaceted way. So you've thought about it most from the perspective of kind of content creators and the film industry itself. Tell us how you're thinking about AI.
Well, it's interesting. I think about it from a couple of different standpoints. I think about it so when I put my Sundance hat on,
Mhm.
yes, that's exactly. And when I put my own individual Ebs as a director hat on, and producer hat, that's what I come. I also own a company that is an education technology company that teaches people how to read and vocabulary and so forth. And that's another kind of thing that's in my portfolio. And I found the real benefits of AI within that business, and within those teams, within that business, and how we can move faster, and so I've seen a lot of the positives. When I wear my content creator, filmmaker, storyteller hat, I still see a lot of positives, but I also see the great risk. And I think one of the things that hasn't been done well is I don't think the Google AIs of the world, I don't think, and not just them, I don't think that the people who are the technology companies that are bringing this to us, I don't think they've done a very good job of the storytelling. I don't think it's we can't it's only been presented to us predominantly as like a big scary Pac-Man that's coming to like eat everybody up. Do you know what
I
I
like
mean?
that, the
And
Pac-Man.
and you just are like, oh my gosh. And yes, we've got to be, and I think there has to be honesty about the fact that these jobs may be lost, but these new jobs may be created, or this thing that took you 8 months to do may now take you 2 days to do.
Mhm.
So I think we have to look at it. And my fear is that because the storytelling has been not great around explaining all of this, my fear is that our natural inclination as humans is to get entrenched in saying, I'm not going to do that. That's going to take something away from me. We see that in politics all the time. We see that around the world. It's like, I'm not doing that because that's going to end my life as I know it right now, as opposed to talking very honestly about the pros, the cons, and the realities of, well, it's here now.
Yes.
It's not going away.
And you're not going to slow it down. You might slow it down in your little universe, but this is a global
This is a
phenomenon.
global phenomenon.
And it's happening,
You
period.
know, look, we look at, I mean, I live in London. We look at, from a European standpoint, you look at EU and the conversations around, okay, well, what regulatory components to this or what regulatory components to that? We look at what's happening on Capitol Hill. But you're also talking about people who largely don't understand what they are trying to regulate.
Yeah. No, we saw that here in Colorado. In fact, that's one of the things we're talking about tonight. We're hosting, as I told you, event with Bennett, who's running for governor, with about 25 of the top technical leaders in this geography. And what our not so wise politicians in this case did is they tried to get out in front of AI by regulating it here in Colorado. And the rest of us tech folks are looking up like, you do realize that most job creation is going to be related to AI in the next 20 years. So you don't want to drive that job creation out of Colorado. You want to bring it into Colorado, and
And
there's
let's
some threats.
understand it.
Yeah, understand it before you try to suppress it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was crazy, and we just couldn't get the leaders behind it to we got them to back off a bit under tremendous pressure, but we couldn't get them to really rethink how they were approaching it, and that's part of the conversation we're going to have tonight.
And I think but I go back to, and I stand by, that is about storytelling.
Mhm.
That's about people understanding what's possible and what's positive, but also being frank about the drawbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in the creative world, for me, I think, and I speak for myself personally. I'm not speaking for Sundance because we don't, that's not my role there. But I think there's immense possibility.
Oh, no question.
Immense possibility. And like with anything else, we have to be careful not to, the genie's out of the bottle, right? So now it becomes, are you going to use your powers for good or evil?
Mhm.
And so how are we going to manage that? How can we see the benefits? And for most of us, we don't even fully understand what the benefits are, because it's spoken about in such an esoteric manner, and it's spoken about amongst a relatively, small corridors who feel like they understand it. It's got to be translated.
Yeah, but even those who know most about AI, the ones who are creating it, the iconic names in Silicon Valley world, they don't have a full understanding where it's going, and those who are expressive often are saying different things from one another. So the story of what AI is going to be, the positives, the negatives, that story is being written.
No, and we don't know what it's going to
Yeah.
be, but we can talk about what it can do to help your everyday life.
Yes.
It's like I keep going back to, I remember when I got my first, I don't know, what was it, like my TI-82 calculator. It didn't mean that I didn't need to learn an equation.
Hmm.
You get your first laptop, the first computer. These aren't. We've had massive technological change. I think we've not seen anything to this scale before, or what this is
and
going
at
to
this
do, and at this
pace.
speed.
Yeah.
But you know, we also can't be terrified.
Yeah. The power of a storyteller who is able to harness AI is going to be so much greater than any storyteller, looking backwards in time. But but that doesn't mean it's the same storyteller that has been able to thrive in the world before AI. Some of them will be able to make that transition, but it also opens the door for brand new you know types of talent who are more able to intuitively, creatively work with kind of these AI tools and bring stories to life in ways that and certainly at a pace and potentially at at a creative level, um, in a different sort of way. Not that it'll be more creative than the past, but the nature of how the creativity comes to life is going to be different. And the problem is very small number of very talented people can accomplish so much, which means there's a lot of people who otherwise would have been a necessary part of those
Yes,
equations who can be disintermediated and are going to be disintermediated.
and will be, and that's right. But I do think there's a look. We're always. I'm a big believer that the human story and the human ability to tell a story will always be core to
Absolutely.
it's
I'm convinced this is not AI is going to do that.
it's not gonna
AI is going to be a tool
do
that
it. It's
helps.
gonna be a tool. It's gonna make certain things faster. It's gonna help, it's gonna help do this. And look, when we think about over, through history, again, going into technological changes in storytelling, Walt Disney was was a genius. Um, the ability to as the entertainment industry, as the culture walked itself into animation, what a different thing that was. And then all of a sudden it was, well, animation is only for cartoons, or it's only, and then all of a sudden one day you look up and, oh gosh, this incredibly affecting, deep um, documentary has animation in it that's drawing you even deeper into the story.
Mhm.
um we look at special effects, my gosh, like George Lucas, there are always going to be things that um evolve us. I mean, and if they don't, my gosh, what are we doing here?
Mhm.
um Again, I think the power is that we have to not be afraid. And I think the only way to not be afraid is to know more and to actually get hands on in working with it and understanding. For those who want to, not everybody wants to do that, and I respect people who don't want to do that. But for me personally, I think I'm far more interested. I'm a person who is more apt to learn something and acknowledge to you that I know how to do it, but I choose not to do it because I don't like it, because it doesn't work for Ebes, than to say, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it just because I don't like it and I've never done it.
Yep. The other kind of second order effect of AI is going to be that you know people are going to um, have um, the kinds of things that they've had to spend time on in the past. They're not going to have to spend time on in the future. So
Yeah.
they're going to be able to shift their time from doing things that were important and valuable looking backwards in time, but are going to be easily uh, done by AI in the future. And so they're going to have kind of this, as society, we're going to have time on our hands. And so the question is, what are we as people, as society, going to do with it? And I think that's a big opportunity for creators, for storytellers, for people who are building experiences, the immersion experience kind of economy. You hear a lot of people talk about that the opportunity to create worlds for people and activities and ways for them to be engaged in ways that are valuable to them, not just for them to go and pass time, but draw people in to be more creative and to participate in creative in a whole different way, because they don't have to go do things that they had to do before that now is going to be done
But
for humans.
yeah, and hopefully, my hope is that with that extra time and with that technological creativity, we also are still. My hope is that we can still push people to be together.
Oh yes, I
You
think
know what I
there's
mean?
more
Like
opportunity for that.
that's the hope. I don't want all of this, and you still have more and more people kind of in their bedroom or in their study or in their office, like, alone, communicating only through their devices. Like, I'm hoping that these things push us towards more human interaction. That's what the goal should be, and I think that should be part of the branding and the storytelling that we're trying to wrap around AI and this new uncharted territory
Yeah,
that we're in.
the shifting of culture, the shifting of society, that's uh, you know, it's already beginning to happen, but it's so under the radar. Uh, but within a very short period of time, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, uh, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to engage with people in a whole different way. Create experiences, create reasons for people to do something different than what they've done in the past. And people are going to need that, because a lot of them are going to be like, okay, I'm not
What
really
do I
sure
do
what to do,
now?
and I don't want to
That's
be
right.
not relevant.
What do I do now?
I don't want to sit there and watch TV, and I want to be engaged in something that is important, that is valuable, that can draw them in, and give them an opportunity to have a valuable, interesting kind of journey in their life, but one that's different, than what the past looked
But
like.
the past, and
It's
look,
scary, but it's going to happen, and it's got to happen.
and it's happened for centuries.
Not at this scale, not this
Not at this
pace.
scale, but you look back and you think, I don't live a life like my grandparents did.
Yep.
I don't even live a life like my parents did. You know what I mean? Things come along and move us in a different direction,
I
and
mean,
they make life easier.
look how different things are today than before COVID. I mean, the transformation in the workplace,
Massive.
none of us saw that coming, and
No.
boom, everything is different when it comes. I mean, the thought of like getting in a car, commuting to work, and working in an office for 5+ days a week, 10+ hours, or getting in a plane all the time. You probably do a fair amount of that still, but that was just
That
a
was
way
the
of
only way to
life.
do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can't imagine reliving that type of life going forward.
Yeah. No, I mean it's now we have to also calculate in what are the trade-offs? Like, we have to ask ourselves, and we have to look quite candidly at what are the things that, what are we, if anything, depending on your business, what are we losing by not having people together
Yeah.
on a regular basis? You know what I mean?
Well, people need to get together and I think what happens is when people do get together now, even if it's for work meetings, but they get together in person, it's a much different and hopefully more positive experience.
And I think it's, there's nuance to human to body language, right? There's nuance to tone. I'm sometimes on a Zoom, and I'll like finish the Zoom, and I'll be like, I don't know if what was he trying to say to me?
Yeah.
Like, that didn't, and I'm not shy, so I'll call a person, and I'm like, hey, can we just run back over in that group meeting? Can I just run back over with you what we were talking about? I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. Okay, because I thought you were, okay, all right. Before I go to, like, what the hell? But that is a different, you and I sitting here, that's a nuance that's much easier picked up on than it is, on a Zoom.
Yep. So I have a confession. I'm going to my first Sundance Film Festival in about a week from now. Actually, yeah, right about a week from
Oh.
now. Tell me what I'm going to experience.
You are going to experience a creative overload. No, you're going to experience. Look, what's great about Sundance, the magical thing about Sundance, are the people. Um, the people who are there because you have this incredible mix of creators and directors and actors and writers and you know cinephiles, um, and everyone is there with a common belief system, which is a curiosity, a belief in the power of storytelling to change minds and hearts. And so it's a bit like whatever one's faith may be or non-faith, but it's like communing in nature, whatever that is. You're kind of with a ton of like-minded people. And what's great about it is, talk about disagreeing. I sit down with people all the time after a film and they're like, I loved it, da, 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 and I'm like, hated it. Or I'm like, wasn't it amazing? Wasn't that so funny? And we bond over that. And so that's one thing. The other thing is, in this world, since we've been talking about technology and sometimes being siloed and not being together, there is still such a great gift to being in a theater and watching a film with a group of people who you don't know. And I can tell you, as a filmmaker, there's nothing more powerful than sitting or standing. I like to stand in the back of the theater, and you're waiting, and you have no idea: are they gonna laugh where I hoped they would laugh? Are they gonna? Is there gonna be a sniffle?
How nerve-wracking is it
Is there
when
gonna
it's
be a
your own,
sniffle? No,
when
it's
it's your own film?
terrifying.
It's gotta
Yeah, and sometimes they don't, and
be.
you're like, okay, I missed it. And sometimes it's based on the audience.
So, 2 or 3 of your most memorable Sundance experiences.
Oh my gosh, 2 or 3 of my most memorable Sundance experiences. I mean, I have a very, I, for me, one of them, which isn't very fair, because I would say that 20, what year is this? We're in 2025? No, we're in
26.
2026. Because 2020, when did COVID happen? COVID happened in
2020.
March of 2020.
Yes,
So we had our last festival
was right before.
was January.
Wow.
January 2020, we had a festival, and then we were supposed to have a festival in 2021, but we didn't because of Omicron. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's right. No, sorry, I kind of got off track. My 3 of my most memorable Sundance experiences. Gosh, I mean, there are too many to count. I'm just trying to think of particular memories. I mean, obviously, there's a great one that I have of seeing this incredible film, Crip Camp, which was really about the disability community fighting for the Americans with Disability Act and the journey of that fight, and being, I think I saw that at the Eccles, and being in the Eccles, and with the team, and with so many of the it is a documentary. It's an excellent documentary with so many of the people in the film, and that was just kind of like a moving moment. I also, a great memory is Coda, which is an amazing film, and Sean, she directed and wrote the screenplay, and that was a film that, to me, really defines beautifully the ecosystem that is Sundance as an institute. Because she came in the screenwriter's lab, then left and worked on it, and has the film. She's always workshopped the film within the Sundance fold, and then that was a very memorable one because you had a real battle between Apple and another studio. I can't remember whether it was Netflix or Amazon, but you had a real battle.
Bit of a bidding war.
You had
that
a
came
real
out of it.
bidding war. Yeah, you don't get those that much anymore. In the 90s, it was all about the bidding war, and you don't get that. And there was a great bidding war. And then that is doubly a memory because I remember going to the Oscars that year, and she won for Best Adapted Screenplay, and then the film won for Best Picture. And that was also the same year that Questlove won for Best Documentary for Summer of Soul. And that was also the year that Will Smith slapped Chris Rock at the Oscars. So those are some. I mean, I also have great memories of sitting in the Eccles on opening night, and Bob Redford coming up and talking to this theater just filled with people, and him reminding us of why we're there and what the power of storytelling is and the value of independent film.
You're probably not starstruck as much anymore at this point in life, but go back a few years when you were still vulnerable to being starstruck. Who starstruck you? Who did you meet and be like, holy cow, this is such an interesting person, and I can't believe I'm hanging out?
Oh, this person. I will say I'm bad for that because I kind of grew up around. I grew up in a family where I was around a lot of stars. But I will say I've met the most. Having dinner with Glenn Close is something that's a really interesting. I'd never met her. We shared a very, very, very close mutual friend of my family, who's a director who had been a director of hers, and having sitting with her and really getting to just to chat with her and talk. That was one of those moments that I remember being like, this is, and it's Sundance, so it's like, our gala night event is not an Oscar party. It's not black tie. You're in jeans and boots.
Really?
And yeah. No.
I guess
Yeah,
winner.
you're in jeans and boots and a blazer, and so there's the environment dictates also, and I think it goes back to what I said earlier, which is in Bob's founding principles, acknowledging and taking in the power of the environment and of nature. And so it gives you, it's such a different vibe than being in LA, getting out of your car, being shuttled down whatever to get to the red carpet. There's a natural ease to it that's just wonderful.
But I imagine, and I guess I'll find out for myself in a few days, but even though it's a casual dress, people probably come out and pay a lot of attention to what kind of casual dress look am I going to have, and people are probably
no. It's really
bummer.
no. It's really. I mean, there are certainly some people who are a little more like, as I like to say, mountain chic
Yes.
than others. But it's so not. It's one of the rare places, I think, in this industry, in the film and the entertainment industry, where people are just so happy. You're so happy to meet that director that you've wanted to meet and just talk to. You're happy to have that moment to say, like Taika, I love Jojo Rabbit, and gosh, what are you working on now? Or whomever, Ryan Coogler, who's got obviously Sinners right now, and and because it's not a big award show, and because it's not a big black tie function, and you're not really yes, there's press there and so forth, but it's still not it's not an overmanaged, overhandled situation. That you have the artists and the storytellers that are there are really also. And the other thing I say is, because of the ecosystem of Sundance, you have so many people who also were in a lab together. I mean, this year at the Golden Globes, Chloe Zhao won for Hamnet. And one of the things she said when she looked out, and she said, Ryan Coogler, I'm thinking about the two of us together at Sundance in the director's lab. There is a sense of it's like an annual family reunion.
Great. Well, my wife Cindy and I, the Caruso Ventures team, the Boulder community, we're here to help you guys as you transition from your past beautiful home of Park City to your new beautiful home of Boulder and throughout Colorado, and anything we could do to help make it a special kind of transition, a special first year, and a long-term partnership with our community, we're going to do. We're there for you.
You guys are the greatest, and you've already been incredibly generous and helpful, and we are super excited, and thank you so much.
All right.
All right,
Well, thank you for doing this.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Bear Roars. Check out Stretch, the new song from Dan Caruso, with music by Jason Mendelsohn, available now on all streaming services. If you enjoyed the episode, please like and subscribe on your listening platform. This podcast was produced by Loud Bear Productions and edited by Kendall Weinberg with support from Gibson Siegert.